In the world of business, we can expect to encounter problems on a daily basis, and clearly some of these problems will be more complicated than others. But whether you're working in your own business or working for an organisation, problem solving is still an essential skill in today's marketplace. So in this session, we'll examine how enterprising people apply problem solving techniques to overcome obstacles and create opportunities. So by the end of this session, you should be able to firstly explain the different types of problem which the enterprising individual may face. You should also be able to explain some of the approaches and techniques which can be applied to problem solving. And lastly, you should also be able to reflect on your own problem solving style and capabilities through practical activities. So as we can see from these definitions, we can define a problem as a situation which to some extent has negative implications which should either be avoided or need to be addressed. Problems are dealt with through the process of problem solving, which involves analysing the problem and applying approaches and techniques which offer potential solutions. Problem solving itself can be either reactive, which involves responding to a problem as it presents itself, or proactive, whereby we try to prevent problems from ever presenting themselves at all. And it should also be noted that problems often go unrecognised or are not dealt with effectively, and this can cause problems to evolve and grow if this is not checked. So in this session, we'll look at how to avoid this and to approach problem solving in a structured way in order to get better outcomes. Now, in real terms, we're constantly exposed to problems in life, at work or at home. However, problems often present opportunities to do things better. Undoubtedly, however, it's human nature to focus on small problems which are easy to solve, but often deeper underlying problems lie at the heart of this. So we need to be open to actually looking for problems on an ongoing basis, not for its own sake, but as an opportunity to identify ways in which we can improve. Now, entrepreneurial people are generally good at both spotting problems and also coming up with solutions to them. And with thinking about problem solving, it can be useful to consider the following questions when you are faced with a problem. Is the problem real or perceived? Is this problem really an opportunity? And does the problem actually need solving? So if we accept that throughout our lives we encounter a variety of problems, how do we actually recognise them? Well, problems will fall into one of the following categories. First, we have maths and probability problems, and this type of problem is concerned with statistics, numerical patterns and chance. Then we have verbal intelligence, and this relates to language and how words, phrases and sentences are constructed. Then we have logical intelligence, and this requires the use of a logical structured approach to make rational deductions. And then we have pattern recognition, which involves using assumptions to identify or predict possible patterns. Then we have lateral thinking problems, which are solved through creative thinking. And we have visual spatial intelligence problems, which require imagination and an ability to visualize possible outcomes. Now, each type of problem requires the application of particular skills, many of which we're already familiar with, such as creativity, where problems are usually solved either through instinct or the application of a systematic process. And intuition is used when no new knowledge is needed. So in real terms, this happens when you know enough about the problem and the environment to simply be able to make a quick decision and come up with a solution. More sophisticated problems or new problems are likely to require a more logical approach to solve, and for these you'll need to use creative thinking. We'll look at some examples of this later. Another useful skill here for problem solving is teamworking. Problem solving your own can be a real challenge, and many problems are best defined and solved with the help of others, as teamworking brings in other skills, experience, expertise and perspectives. Risk management is also useful in the context of problem solving, as it involves a certain amount of risk, and this risk needs to be weighed up against the consequence of not solving the problem at all. Again, risk management is a key enterprising skill, and it's particularly important here. As is decision making. Now, problem solving and decision making are closely related skills, and making a decision is an important part of the problem solving process, as you will often be faced with various options and alternatives, and you really need to be able to identify the best course of action fairly quickly. Now, all problems have two features in common: goals and barriers. And firstly, we'll look at goals. Now, in order to solve a problem, we need to establish what our goal is, or in other words, what is the desired state of affairs that we will see if we manage to actually solve the problem. Goals can be anything that you wish to achieve or where you want to be. If you're hungry, then your goal is probably to find something to eat. If you're the head of an organisation, for example a CEO, then your main goal may be to maximise profits, and this main goal may need to be split into numerous sub-goals in order to fulfil the ultimate aim of increasing profits. Next, we have barriers, and if there were no barriers in the way of achieving a goal, then there would ultimately be no problem. Problem solving involves overcoming the barriers or obstacles that prevent the immediate achievement of our goals. If we take our earlier examples, then if you feel hungry, then your goal is to eat. A barrier to this may be that you have no food available, so you take a trip to the supermarket and you buy some food, removing the barrier and thus solving the problem. Of course, for the CEO who wants to increase profits, there may be many more barriers preventing the goal from being reached, such as inadequate skills or funds to implement the desired changes within the organisation. The CEO needs to attempt to recognise these barriers and remove them, or find other ways to achieve the goals of the organisation. Whilst all problems come with their own set of challenges, many of these are so complex that we term them wicked problems. According to Riddle 1973, a wicked problem is a social or cultural problem that is difficult or impossible to solve for one or more of four reasons. The first of these is incomplete or contradictory knowledge. And in situations like this, the number of people and opinions involved and the large economic burden or the interconnected nature of these problems with other problems causes huge challenges and barriers to actually solving the problems. The characteristics of wicked problems include, firstly, that there might be no criteria on which to determine whether you've actually been able to solve the problem. We also might encounter problems around the fact that solutions are not true or false, they're only going to be good or bad, and there are always more than one explanation and solution to any problem. Every wicked problem is also unique, and wicked problems can seem very intimidating or overwhelming, and some examples of these are global warming, the global financial crisis, the war on terrorism, sustaining a national healthcare system, or what to do when oil resources run out. We can also think about funding the security system, world hunger, environmental planning, and the fact that we live in an ageing world. Now, this quote highlights the extent of the challenges we face when trying to deal with extremely complex problems with no obvious and satisfying solution. Approaching complex problems can be very, very discouraging, but there's an even more complex category of problems which we term super wicked problems, and these have all the same issues associated with wicked problems, plus a whole range of new problems, such as the policies in place may actually take no account of the future, those seeking to solve the problem are actually causing it or interfering with it and making it worse, time's running out, or there's no central authority making decisions. So how do we actually problem solve in real terms? Well, addressing problems means that we tend to adopt one of two approaches: logical thinking and lateral thinking. Now, logical thinking is sometimes called vertical thinking, and to think logically we need to think rationally and in linear sequences, and in doing so we can work towards a predictable outcome. Lateral thinking allows us to be able to think more creatively and to use our imagination to solve problems. In doing this, we should look at problems from unexpected perspectives, and we should discard the obvious outcomes or conclusions, looking for more creative solutions. Entrepreneurial thinkers are generally believed to be very creative, however they must also be able to tap into the logical part of the brain when required. Now, there are a number of approaches and techniques which you can use to solve problems, and we'll look at some examples here. The first approach to problem solving is the straw man approach. So firstly, the idea here is to build something very quickly and then knock it down and create a solid final solution based on what we have learned from the entire process. With a straw man, the following approach is applied. First, we need to define the problem and get the best handle on the problem itself, given the available information. The next stage is to develop some ideas. Don't get bogged down in detail, it's really about taking action quickly at this stage. Then we need to look for a quick solution. This is designed, remember, to be only a temporary fix. We need then to analyse the proposal, find the weak points, clarify assumptions and refine our ideas. And then we need to implement those ideas and put them into practice. From this, we then need to learn from the whole process. We need to work out what to retain and what to discard before coming up with a new, stronger proposal. Then we need to draft a new proposal and repeat the process until a final decision is made. Now, one of the main advantages to this approach is that the straw man forces you to do something. Taking too long to deliberate the merits of an idea can be costly, as you risk never making a decision at all. With a straw man, you force an early, if incomplete, decision, and this ensures that a final decision will be reached, because doing nothing means accepting a poor plan by default. Another approach to problem solving is observation, and this approach involves the following stages. Firstly, we've got a period of observation and careful inspection where we are trying to fact find and develop a clear picture of the problem itself. This phase is all about analysis and building a more comprehensive picture of both the goals and the barriers around the problem. This stage may not be necessary for very simple problems, but is essential for problems of a more complex nature. The main considerations here are that solutions come from insights, and insights are simply interpretations of what you observe. An insight itself is definitely not a solution. Observation represents the what, whilst insights represent the why. Insight helps us identify user needs, and insights uncover hidden meaning, and whilst creating a more useful understanding of the observations. Creating an insight is not easy. A good insight comes from the observation data and is not obvious. It requires time and reflection. The process involves thinking about potential motives, thoughts and mental models behind what you have observed. Frameworks can help to capture insights, and frameworks such as this one make it possible to adopt a systematic approach to problem solving by developing deep and meaningful insights based on observation. And by using a tool such as the AEIOU checklist, we can adopt a structured approach to observe the problem in order to gain a deeper understanding of it, which will lead to better solutions. Here, AEIOU stands for activities, environments, interactions, objects and users, and this checklist provides a framework for entrepreneurs to interpret and analyse the most important aspects of the problem, namely activities, which are the main actions the users perform, environments, which is the physical place in which the observation is being carried out, interactions, which are the connections between users and objects or other users, both made by physical contact or perceived by the senses, and then objects, which are the material elements in the space with practical and functional considerations. Then we have users, which are human beings that experience the use of objects during activities. Now, by approaching the problem in this way, we gain insight and meaning which provide clues to what a potential solution may look like. Another popular approach to problem solving is mindstorming, and a popular example of this is de Bono's hats. And this technique involves those taking part adopting a particular paradigm or perspective towards the problem, and this forces individuals to suspend their standard behavioural norms, and it can be a useful approach to overcome group working issues and challenges such as domination. Now, to apply this technique, each member is given a coloured card or token relating to a specific perspective, and then they're asked to come up with observations on the chosen problem in the spirit of that viewpoint. Now, this technique can be very powerful when working in pressurised environments or where the stakes are high or the time frame is very tight. These perspectives, represented by colours, are as follows. Red relates to gut feelings and intuition, and in order to get a genuine instinctive response to the problem, the red hat should go first in their reflection. Blue is concerned with the thinking process, and the blue hat runs the exercise, making sure that time limits are adhered to and everyone stays in their own character. Yellow relates to the overall benefits, so these should be stressed by the yellow hat wearer, whereas green should focus on creativity and new ideas, and that should be the focus of the person wearing the green hat. Black relates to judgment and difficulties associated with the idea, so they should be more pragmatic about the brainstorming, whereas the person with the white hat is preoccupied only with finding out the basic information and facts. Another popular approach to problem solving that's similar to mindstorming is painstorming, and this follows the normal process of mindstorming, whereby everyone is encouraged to throw in their ideas either in a structured or an unstructured way. However, painstorming involves identifying your customers' pains and focusing on them specifically in order to solve the problems. With painstorming, it's important to remember that the customer may or may not be conscious about the existence of the pain, and the customer may also view the current situation as acceptable or simply something that they just have to get on with. Having said this, though, the enterprising individual sees an opportunity of moving the current position to a higher position by addressing the customer's pain. Usually this leads to come up with a better product. Another popular approach to problem solving is entrepreneurial thought and action, and this is a concept that when applied to problem solving involves a flipped mindset, whereby the individual focuses on potential returns for their projects rather than the potential losses which may result. Instead, they generally concentrate on spending or putting in only what they can afford to lose. They are also more likely to launch their idea before it is fully formed and to try more times. In effect, they get more times to bat on a problem in the same elapsed time. In addition, using entrepreneurial thought and action changes the very definition of failure to solve a problem, as all learning gained as a result is deemed to be valuable in the long run. By starting with whatever you have to hand and not knowing the exact outcome, the definition of what is and is not a failure to solve a problem becomes much more ambiguous. So, having reflected on some of the different approaches to problem solving, let's now take a very brief look at a few specific examples of the sort of techniques you can apply to make the problem solving process less painful. So the first technique is to visualize the problem by drawing a picture. Many people like to work visually, and when trying to pin down the nature of a problem and any potential solution, it can sometimes be useful to sketch the problem out as either a picture or as a mind map. So give this a try next time you're facing a problem. Alternatively, you can make a list. It can be useful to quickly break down problems and potential solutions into simple lists, which can highlight at a glance where the connections lie. So again, give this a try. Next, we can theorise and guess and check our guesses. And this involves detecting and recognising that there is a problem. We need to then identify the nature of the problem, then define the problem. And often even identifying a problem can be a difficult task in itself. And we need to start by asking a series of very basic questions in order to initiate an open discussion around the problem. And these questions should include things like, is there a problem at all? What's the actual nature of the problem? And are there in fact numerous problems that need to be solved? We can also ask, how can the problem be best defined? And by spending some time defining the problem, you'll not only understand it more clearly yourself, but you'll also be able to communicate its nature to others. Now, much of the insight gained from this type of exercise will be guesswork, and it's critical that these insights are checked before a plan of action is decided. The next technique is to analyse a problem by building and testing a model around it. When dealing with complex problems, it can be useful to create a model which captures the resources required to solve the problem. This can then be used as a basis for decision making, but remember again, this model must be tested and if necessary adapted to ensure that it becomes an effective tool for problem solving. Alternatively, you can dramatise the problem or act it out. Now, regardless of the approach you take to problem solving, you're likely to generate a range of possible courses of action, but you'll need to think about how to evaluate them at this stage. And in a group situation, this is often carried out as a basic mindstorming session, letting each person in the group express their views on possible solutions or part solutions. In organisations, different people have different expertise in different areas, and it's useful therefore to try to get the views of each concerned party, and you can do this through talking through different scenarios or even through role play in order to test the effectiveness of your ideas and your solutions. The next technique is to experiment and play with objects to learn more about the problem. Now, as humans, we're designed to solve problems through creativity and also to learn through the act of play. Play also allows us to break down many of the barriers to creativity, and by bringing an element of fun into traditional mindstorming sessions, we can potentially increase the frequency and also the quality of our the ideas that we're generating, and this can be very powerful in the context of problem solving. So thinking about the nature of problems and problem solving, let's take a look at some practical, logical and lateral thinking problems. Now, in some cases you can argue that there is more than one answer to each of these problems, but in all cases there's usually only one truly satisfying answer. So let's have a go. Now remember, what you might want to do is every time we set you a question, you might want to pause this digital lecture to give yourself time to reflect and answer on it. You can do that for as long as you want. So question 1. If the day after tomorrow is 4 days before Tuesday, then what day is today? Now the answer here is Tuesday. So moving on to question 2. You're running a race and you overtake the second person in the race. What position are you in? The answer here is second. Question 3. Again, you're running a race and you overtake the last person. What position are you in? Now in this case there could be more than one answer which is both logical and satisfying. You could have lapped the last person and are now first, or you could have lapped the last person in the race but not be the only person to do so. So you could be in any position except for the last. Question 4. What can you put into a wooden box that would make it lighter? And the only logical answer here is holes. Question 5. You're standing outside a windowless room with 3 bulbs inside. You cannot see into the room, and you have 3 switches which each turn on 1 bulb only. You can turn each switch on or off as many times as you like, but you may only enter the room once. How can you tell which switches turn on which bulbs in a single visit? And this is not a trick question. The answer here requires you to remember that light is only one property of a light bulb. It also generates heat, so you switch on one bulb and leave it on for 5 minutes until the bulb gets hot. You then turn that switch off and turn either of the other two switches on, and when you go into the room, the lit bulb will correspond to the switch you just activated, and the bulb which is off but hot will correspond to the first switch you turned on, and the bulb that is off and cold is the switch you've yet to activate. So question 6. A woman lives on the 10th floor of a block of flats, and every morning she takes a lift down to the ground floor and goes to work. In the evening she gets into the lift, and if there's someone else in the lift, she goes back to her floor directly. Otherwise she goes to the 8th floor and walks up 2 flights of stairs to her flat. How do you explain this? The answer is, the woman is simply too short to reach the 10th floor button. If there's someone else in the lift, she asks them to push the button for her. And here we have the last question, question 7. If you have 2 coins totaling 11 pence, and one of the coins is not a penny, what are the 2 coins? The answer here is one coin is not a penny, but the other one is a penny. Therefore the answer is a 10 pence piece and a penny. The following exercise is designed to provide an opportunity to explore the nature of problem solving. So here's the problem before you. Now in Africa every day, millions of women and girls spend countless hours each year fetching water, and to do this they often have to walk very long distances in extreme heat, balancing heavy containers on their heads. It's back-breaking work, and this sometimes causes crippling injuries. So in your groups, apply one or more of the techniques from this session to come up with an innovative solution to the pains in this activity. List as many pains as you can and think about what the benefits of solving these pains would be for the user. Think about what a solution might look like, and then finally look at the solution that I found called Q-Drum and reflect on how well it solves the pain. So thinking about the pain that you're trying to solve for the customer and or the end user, populate a market screening test template for your own idea for the group assignment of this module.